G'day, Mr. Fitz here. Hope you're going well. This short video is video 5 of our Mould series. Now you've got your assembly, we want to create a technical drawing, which you guys have been practicing and getting used to. We can go File, New to find a drawing, or a shortcut is to go Make Drawing from Assembly. That shouldn't give you that error. That's just for my computer. Now, here we choose our drawing sheet. So we're going to use an A3 size. We'll fit our work and go OK. Now, over on the side here, we need to pick an appropriate view, which should be this top view here. If we click and drag that out into our workspace, it dumps that there. We can now press Escape because it asks us if we want to create more projections. Press Escape. Now, if I click on this view here, on the side here, you'll see from our knowledge of orthographic views, these are different projections. So you got top, front, right, bottom. So if you click through those, you'll see how the drawing changes. There's even isometric. We just want to make sure we're looking down from the top, like so. Now, the other thing we need to change on here, under scale, we want to change this to custom scale, and we're going to go 1:1 scale. So that means it's 100% the size. 1/2 is a half scale. Click on the tick here, and you should see that that should be about the size of your sheet. Now, just double check that this all looks correct. I've got my profile cut here and my text. Cool. Now, in this, good thing to do is to save your work. So put this onto your H drive first as a SolidWorks drawing. Then what we're going to do is do a file save as to create a copy of this as a PDF. So change the file type to PDF. And I've got one here already. I'm just going to replace it. Make sure the name is the same as your drawing. So a PDF is actually what we call a vector file, and we're going to open this up with another software. So if I go over to my folder, one thing I can do is find that in my program here, or what I want you to do is to open up the Start menu, and I want you to type Adobe, and you need to find Adobe Illustrator. That's the software we're going to use to tidy up this drawing and get this into our laser cutter. So Adobe Illustrator is part of the Adobe suite. It's quite different to Photoshop. Some people may have used Photoshop before, but Adobe Illustrator deals with what we call vectors, which are lines and detail that we can use for laser cutting. So as you can see, this is a 2D drawing. We can only cut in 2 dimensions on a laser cutter. Here is our interface, so we can go open, and then we can find that file and open it. Might give you some errors, just go OK. You're going to have to also use your LearnLink login to access this software, so just keep that in mind. And in the software, you'll see that it looks a bit like Adobe Photoshop if you've used that before. On the side here, we've got various tools we can use. This tool is the key. It's called the selection tool. This allows us to click things. And what you're going to find in this drawing is a series of bits and pieces. So if I can click on my views here, these are the ones that I'm going to need for laser cutting. Everything else is just garbage. So if I click and drag a window around the outside, making sure I don't select my work, I can press delete on my keyboard and repeat that to take away all of this stuff here. So drag a window, select it, press delete. Cool. Now, if I do the same again around here without pressing delete, I'm going to move this into the top left-hand corner, which is what I want to do with it. Now, a few things to learn about laser cutting. There's 2 things you can do with a laser cutter. One is cut a profile. So we want to cut all of these outside profiles. The second thing we can do is engrave, which means removing material off of a surface. Now, I plan to engrave this Fitz logo, which is back to front, which will make sense when I actually do my mold. But the rest of it I want to cut. Now, to cut in Illustrator, everything must be a particular color. So this here is called the stroke, meaning the outside of my lines, and my lines must be a certain thickness. If it doesn't meet that criteria, it will engrave it. Otherwise, it must meet that to cut it. All right, so let's do it for my work. If I click on this now, I'm just going to click on release, because at the moment it's all grouped together. Now, if I drag a window around all of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the stroke of this. So if I click on this little icon, at the moment it's black. I can make it nothing. What I want to do is actually add a color. So if I go new swatch, pops up with this, and here I'm actually building a color. The only color the laser cutter recognizes is 255 red, 0 green, 0 black. It's called RGB red. Just click OK, and you should see that's now selectable. If I click on that, the outline of my work is now red. Beauty. Now the only one I don't want is this one here, so I'm just going to change that one. I'll do that in a second though. If I keep that highlighted around the outside, the only thing I must also change is the line thickness. Now, laser cutting will cut 0.003 points. So press 003, press enter, and that will change the line thickness. It's very, very thin. This is actually called a micron thickness. And if I click on that again, yeah, you'll see that it's 0.003 points, which is PT, which is a unit of measurement. Cool, that's really all you need to know to cut. Now, I'm going to have a quick go here. I've got a suspicion I might have some problems with this text here. Problem, as soon as you change your lines, it gets very hard to see, as you can see. Now, if I drag a window around the fits, what I'm going to do for this one is I don't want to cut this, I'm going to engrave it. So I'm going to change this color. I'm going to add another color. I'm going to make this one black. So if I go 255, sorry, if I go 000, it gives me black. Go OK. And there we have black. Now, I actually don't want it to have a stroke. I want it to have a fill. So I'm going to try, yeah, this is what I thought. All going well, when your lines come in from Illustrator, this will fill this whole area black. So we want fits in black. Now, this is where the software here can be useful for us. If you're trying to do text, or if you're trying to get, say, like a logo of a team or something more complicated that you can't put into our SolidWorks program, you can do it within the software here to engrave. So check with Mr. Fitz if you're unsure what to do. But if you want to do some clever engraving or a logo or something, it's probably easiest to bring that in here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to keep this here for a second, but I'm going to put some text in here. So if you go to the text tool over here, I'm going to click and I'm going to type in Fitz. Now what I'm going to do is change this font to suit this font. So you can go through all of your font styles, and this is the font here. I'm going to make it bigger. So that looks about right. So up there is the settings. Depending on your version of Illustrator, you might find that the size settings and the fonts here, mine's at the top, but you can get it here as well. Cool. Now that looks exactly the same. It's all fill. That's going to engrave. However, you must remember it has to go backwards. So a quick little tip on this one. If I go edit, object, transform, reflect is the tool. And then what I can do is reflect it vertical or horizontal. I'm going to do it vertical and go OK. And you'll see here that it flips my text backwards. So that looks pretty spot on what I had. And again, this normally, those lines would allow me to fill, but it's not. So I'm going to recreate it here. I'm just going to essentially move this into place. I'm just going to highlight the old one, and I'm going to move this one up in its place. Whoop, don't delete it. Drag a window around the old one and then move the old one up in place. So one thing you can do to do that more accurately, before I just dragged it, what I can do is if I click on my object here, over here is a little icon that gives me a reference point. So if I click the middle of that, it's going to grab my dimensions, so X and Y of where that lives. Now where I want that to go is going to be to these 277.256, 27.443. So how will I remember that? I'm just going to write it down on a piece of paper, or I could do a quick little screenshot. I'm going to do a quick little screen grab of that one. Whoop. What's that? Get out of the way. Sorry. So do a quick screenshot. Grab those dimensions, and then what I can do is that I can now delete that, And if I put those dimensions back in here, so it was 277.256, and the Y dimension was 27.443. Now that should be exactly in the same spot as my other part. Awesome. Now that should be there 100% ready to go over to the laser cutter. So the most important thing from this point is save your file. So go File, Save, and it should update that PDF that you've already created. The next step is go File, Save a Copy, and you can create a copy onto a USB. So Mr. Fitz will lob you guys some USBs and we'll get you to save those things onto your USB and then take them over to the laser cutter, and we'll show you the last steps on the laser cutter. Cool, that is it for this tutorial. One thing you can find when you transfer text, once you've got your text right, you can click on it, right click and go Create Outlines. Every now and then fonts don't like to transfer to the laser cutter, so we can just make that as an outline. But the problem is I can't edit that now, so just be mindful. Once everything's right, create outlines and off you go. Awesome, thanks folks. Next step, we're going to go onto our laser cutter.